This is going to be the intro to part 5 of the BandSaw series. I'm not going to, this will probably be the last of the BandSaw series for a while. I finished the tables, and that's what this is going to be about. This episode's going to be about. But I'm really not going to be able to do anything else on it until I get the lift back to run the electric to it. As soon as I do that, then I'll complete it. Probably in the meantime, we'll get it painted also. But here we go. Okay, so I'm back on the welding bench. Not welding bench. Lead-off table for the bandsaw. I cut the legs. I've got them on. I made some more of those squares. I got them all tacked on. Actually welded out 2 sides on this one. That board is just a to hold it apart while I was welding it. Again, when I welded on it, welded it at the bottom, it drew the top in, so I just stuck that board in there to hold it in place while it welded and then cooled. I'm gonna have angle iron in the bottom of them. Probably about 6 inches up from the bottom of the plate, about 6 inches up, not from the floor, because those feet go on there, those leveling pads. But there it is. I've got to finish welding out those plates. I think I missed a couple of welds here and there on it. I'll take care of that. Here's what I'm talking about on the angle iron going kind of a stretcher in between the legs. But anyways, more to come. I'll bring you back. I'm just going to shoot a little more welding on this table. I've got those squares. I've welded some of them out. Not some of them out. I've done some welding on them, but I've got to get them finished up. Kind of in the spot where I'm like out of position welding, or where it's you're not in a real good position to make the weld. One of the things you might notice is that I've got my welding jacket on. Kind of burned up one of the sleeves on my shirt, so decided it might be time to switch to a welding jacket. As long as I'm here, I'm going to do this over here too. That's it for now. Bring it back. I'm going to show you the bottom of this lead-off table. These are the legs, and what I did is I just took a flapper disc, a sanding disc, and smoothed them welds out so that it would flow into it without you knowing that there had been a weld there. And you might ask why I did that. It's not that I did it because that's the way I wanted it on this. I did it to see if I could do it, because you never know when you may need to do it for something. And so what better test piece than this? But I kind of did all of the legs like that. Didn't really take that long, probably 10 minutes with a flapper disc. But anyways, there it is. I'll bring you back. Okay, back over here at the lead-off table, and yesterday, and this is in the next morning, yesterday I showed you the how I had blended the welds on those feet. Now, again, I didn't have to do that. What I did is I did it to see if I could do it, because you never know when there's a project that comes up where they want the welds blended in. But anyways, what I did is I actually run them corners over, but that's not the reason why I'm making this clip. The clip is to show you that what I did is primed and put a coat of flat black paint on the bottom where the pads are going to go, the leveling pads. I'm going to, what I'm going to do is when that paint dries, I'm going to put the pads on and set it up against the bandsaw and kind of lay out what my plan is with the table actually in place, what my plan is for getting around this stop, material stop, and how I'm going to accomplish the expanded metal, being able to remove a piece of expanded metal around here so that I can pivot this stop up if I ever have to use it. But I could design it with the table not next to the bandsaw, but as long as I've got the table and I've got the bandsaw right here, why not put it up there and just lay it out with the table in position. So I just wanted to show you that. Okay, I'm shooting this little clip because after the last clip that I just left off with, I actually put the table up against the bandsaw and laid out how I wanted that support structure to be into the table to support the hinged piece that's going to go over the stop rest. For some reason, I can't import that clip into my editing program, and so I can't show it to you. So just so that you know, put the table up against the bandsaw and laid out how I wanted those supports to go. And the next clip will be showing you the material that I'm going to use and how I put it together. Okay, so in a previous video I had mentioned I had the table up against the bandsaw, and I put some witness marks on it where I wanted the supports to hold the expanded metal and have the supports that where I could have the piece that lifts off for that stop guide. So what I did is I came over here to the welding table with the lead-off table and flipped it over on it, and I extended those witness marks up onto the tube steel there, and it might be too dark to see it, but I also extended it there. Then what I did is I clamped the table down to the welding table, and what I did is extended them marks out on the welding table, squared them up and extended them out, and then cut a piece of tube steel for this one and a piece of tube steel for this one. Now what I'm going to do is I'll take them over to the chop saw and put 45-degree angles on them, and weld them in place at a 45-degree angle. What I'll do is clamp it down, weld it all out. Now, I found this tube steel in my drop racket. I'm sorry, drop rack, and it's not the same thickness. This is 3/16, and I think this is 1/8 inch, but it'll suffice for what I'm using it for, because it's kind of just an intermediate support for basically for that removable piece of expanded metal, so that I can, if I use the stop guide on the bandsaw. But I'll bring you back, and I probably won't show you cutting the 45s, but I'll bring you back when I get it laid out. So I told you that I was going to miter those corners, and that's exactly what I did. What I did is I just took them over to the chop saw and mitered them. And what I'll do is I'll tweak them a little bit. It's really close. I'll just tweak it with a grinder a little bit. Grind some of this off. Get some good tacks on this, and get it clamped down so that it holds it solid and level with the table, because the bottom side, the table side, is the top of the lead-off table. So I want to make sure it stays in good position. So I'll clamp it down as I'm tacking and welding it, so that I don't get that weld warpage on it. But anyways, I'll bring you back for some of the welding. Okay, here it is. Here it is again. What I did is, I told you I was going to tweak a little bit. They weren't exactly on the lines. The 45 wasn't exactly right. So, well, I'm not going to say the 45 wasn't right. The length of it wasn't right. So what I actually did is took, which one was it? It was this one. This one was a little bit too long, so I just took it back to the chop saw and just kind of eased it into the side of the wheel and ground a little off of it that way. A lot easier than doing it with a hand grinder, where you can't get full contact with it. So it made more contact with it, but I've got to take it apart. I'm going to, where I did it, there's some rough edges on it. I'll take it down with the hand grinder, and then I'll bring you back when I weld it. Okay, I've got it set up, just some tacks to hold it in place. I've got to get some good tacks on it, and then I'll weld it out. You just got to be a little bit careful with this, because the tube steels are different thicknesses. Yeah, see, I blew a hole through it doing that. Because of that different thickness, I got to concentrate most of the weld onto the thicker of the material. It stutter was me. My arm got hung up on the clamp, and I jerked it. Okay, what I'm going to do is try and run a couple of downhills over in here and maybe one over in there, and then going to let it cool off, flip it over, and maybe I'll try and get a gusset in here too, just to kind of give it a little more stability. Let me think about that, but I'll bring you, let me try. I'm going to do this one downhill, and then I'll bring you back for the rest of it. So I found a piece of scrap laying around. It was taller. I cut it off to height, but it had that angle on it. So just 1/8 inch, the same as this support tube is. So I welded that gusset on there. I took it down off the welding table, and I haven't welded that support out on top yet, but it is good. You know, well, maybe a little high there, but it's probably maybe 50 thousandths or so. I could probably take it down a little bit with the well, what I'll do is I'll weld it out, and I'm only going to weld a little bit at a time, so I probably won't show it to you, or maybe I'll show you one weld, but I'll weld a little bit at a time, let it cool off, and make another weld, let it cool, like that. But anyways, it's sturdy. So what I did is, before I welded the top out, I brought the table over here and just sat it up next to the bandsaw in position where it's going to go, just to double check and make sure that I got everything right. And I did. And so I'm going to go ahead and weld it out, weld that support bracket out. And then probably, what will I do first? I'm going to cut the expanded metal, I guess, first, then paint it. I'm not sure if, yeah, I did show that in another video. I actually painted the bottom of the legs just so that there would be paint down there and I wouldn't get it all over the leveling feet. But anyways, there it is. I'm going to take it back and weld it out and start cutting the expanded metal for it. I'm going to give you some shots of this. I'm probably going to edit it, just shot some of the welding. Table's down on the floor. Going to do the top. Going to stagger around so that I don't build up too much shade in it. I'll hopefully keep it from warping. Okay, so here's the lead-off table with the expanded metal on it. Now, I don't have that expanded metal piece cut in there. I'm still thinking about it. You know what I was actually thinking about doing is getting like a piano hinge, welding it to the expanded metal so that I can hinge it or roll it up out of the way. Just a thought. The reason why I thought that, not necessarily just because of the hinge effect, but because that piece is going to get bounced around, and that way it would be anchored to the frame. Just be there. I was going to line these things up. Here I go in my anal state again. I was going to line those things up, and it worked out better so, that I just staggered them. I kind of overlapped the stagger a little bit, if you can tell there. But anyways, there it is. Still got to be painted, but and that piece put on, the piece put on before it gets painted, but I'll do that sometime later. It's probably, if I had the lift here, I would start working on the electricity and get that run over here so that I can get this thing going. But he's got the lift on a project and probably going to have it for another week, week and a half. So it's going to be a while before that. But I'm going to let the table sit here for a little while. Probably go start working on the drill press. Okay, back on the bandsaw table, lead-off table. What I did is cut a piece of expanded metal to fit over that opening where that stop goes, underneath the stop, and I really wanted to get a couple of piano hinges. Now, I only went to value because it's close to the shop, and I just didn't want to go out to Lowe's or Home Depot or someplace like that. I couldn't find any piano hinges, which I really wanted, a piano hinge on it. But the only piano hinges that Value had was, there's probably, copier paper is probably thicker than the metal on those things. So what I ended up doing is getting a couple of regular hinges and put them on there. So what I did is I laid the piece in where I wanted it. I'm going to have to bend that a little bit. Must have expanded by the heat. But anyways, I just laid that piece on there, positioned the hinge, and what I did is just tack welded it through the holes of the hinges. And I did the same thing on the bottom side to the tube steel. I just tacked it through the holes of the hinges. It's just a hinging mechanism. There's not going to be a lot of strain on those hinges, so the tacks through the hinges will hold just fine. But anyways, there is that. It's ready for paint, so that's my next step. One thing that I wanted to mention, if anybody was wondering, the hinges part to stick up in the air is well inboard of where the rest goes. The rest actually has a plane about out here, so it'll be well inboard of where that goes. If anybody was wondering or worrying about the material catching on those hinges, so it won't do that. Just a quick shot. I've got it over here, primed it last night, so going to paint the legs first, and then put the I'll paint the tape off the legs and then paint the top. But I just want to give you a quick shot of it primed. Black painted on the bottom, still primed at the top. Just a quick shot. Okay, so here is the lead-off table in place and painted. I just finished painting it, just moved it over here. Well, logically, it dried first before I moved it over. But anyways, there it is in place and set. I've got to, so that's the completion of the tables. The next phase is going to be running the wiring over here. But I can't do that until I get that lift back again, which is probably going to be about another week. So, there probably won't be much done on this. I'll be working on other things in the meantime. Maybe some painting on it, but I'm not really sure of that even. But I'll bring you back.